Well, we got a pretty interesting matchup this week. We have two teams that certainly at this stage resemble each other very closely. Both teams have done relatively well on defense against the run. Both teams probably have given up more long passes than they would have liked to have given up, which has negated some of the good work against the run that the teams have been able to do. Both teams have 3 sophomores and 2 juniors on the offensive line. One of our sophomores being a redshirt freshman, but still in his second year in school. Both teams have not run the ball as well as I'm sure they would like to do. So a lot of similarities between the two teams. There's similarities in the team's defensive schemes, not exactly, but there's similarities. So I think it's a pretty even matchup. I'd say given that Duke has had a lot more time to rest and most particularly prepare, and the fact that they're at home, that's probably an advantage for them that when things are even, certainly would be a desirable advantage to have. The last 2 teams they've played are teams that historically have been very steeped in running the ball, Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. And both those teams had minimal success in running the ball. And most of the yardage gained in both those 2 games was by passing the ball. And I know there was one point well into the 4th quarter. You know, Virginia Tech's got that scoreboard that keeps the run-pass numbers on it. And the first time I watched that game, there was one time well into the 4th quarter. I mean, I think the score was 30-0 or 36-0 at that time. And Virginia Tech had 78 yards rushing and something like 320 yards passing. And so they've been very sticky against the run. Obviously, they gave Wake Forest a very difficult time, and particularly against the run. So I would say right now at this stage it looks very challenging. Part of the process of becoming a real quarterback is, you know, quarterbacks got to work themselves out of some difficult situations. You know, I mean, that's the same thing in any sport. You know, I see, you know, you see a pitcher sometimes. He's got to work himself. Not every game's a shutout. He's got to work himself out of some difficult circumstances. Golfers have to do the same thing. They get off to a good start. They get a bogey, a par, another bogey. They got to work themselves out of that situation. And that's part of competition. And that's part of guys being able to respond to what's in front of them. And individuals and ultimately teams, good teams are teams that are able to work themselves through whatever they face. And that's made up out of a lot of players who have the ability to do that. And that adds up collectively. But that certainly goes with the quarterback position, very much so. And not only in that particular game, but while the game finished up probably on a positive note or a positive direction for Jamil, and I say that because, again, as I cited last Friday, in the second half, on all the balls that you know, not your little kind of gimme throws, but the balls that really required for a quarterback to stand out, he threw a real good go pattern. He threw a real good in cut. He threw a real good seven route. He threw a real good out cut. You know, big time throws. So he had those throws in the second half. But if you certainly look at the game as a whole, it wouldn't be accurate to say that, okay, now everything's great. Jamil worked himself out of those circumstances. There's still going to be a lot to work through here. There's a way to improve a pitcher's accuracy, but it's not by aiming the ball. It's to improve things mechanically. And Jamil saw the other day, well, he's always been pretty good about just letting that thing rip in practice. But he saw the other day he was trying to be a little bit too careful, trying to aim it in there. And once he got over that and just started to let it rip a little bit, those throws improved throughout the course of the game. And so we would hope that would be one of the lessons that came out of that first experience for him. we're kind of in the era of the spread offense now. And with those teams that have followed the trend and are really committed to that, where they're could be up to 65 or 70% pass, and to those teams that are firmly entrenched in the grinded out type of mold, and certainly if you're in certain situations in high school that are just more advantageous historically in terms of the players that attend the school, there's some schools that do yearly very well by grinding it out. They're just going to be superior physically, and they can do that. So we certainly do find that to be the case, yes.
Did you feel with Jamil, just because of their run-oriented system, that it might take him a little longer?
Yeah, and then that was really the case. Just there was so much of, just the whole idea, Jeff, of hot reads and, when you're throwing the ball, obviously that brings in the opponent's pressure, and opponent's pressure brings in all the sight adjusts and the hot reads, and that brings in another set of players reading the defense and making decisions, and it just adds to the complexity of it. It's about so much more than throwing the ball, which is certainly an area that's misunderstood in a lot of ways, but it's not necessarily always who has the best ball. Okay, there's so much more that goes into it. He's I'd say he's pretty much back to normal, Doug. Seems to have done a pretty good job being able to overcome these Achilles issues that he's had. We're conscious of, especially in practice, of just not overdoing it with him. That is, not recreating the circumstances that brought them about in the first place. But his season was really in jeopardy back in June. In fact, there was some recommendation that he go ahead and be operated on at that time. And he resisted that. He knew it would mean that he was out for the whole season. And we might as well push forward. Had to manage his circumstances during training camp a little bit. But since we've been done with the rigors of that, he's recovered nicely.
It seems, and you use this term a lot, dependable players. It seemed like over the last month of last season, he was pretty dependable.
Yeah, I'd say he's one of the most, particularly right now, one of the most dependable players on offense.
Is it possible he could play more?
I'd like to see that occur, sure. Usually, I mean, it's a real plus on your, particularly on your kickoff coverage and kickoff return. If you can find a defensive lineman to be part of that one, it's just, when you're trying to personnel that, there's a lot of players that aren't even candidates. So the pool of guys comes from certain positions, and so you might have 85 guys on your team or 100 guys on your team, but there's a lot of them who aren't even candidates for those teams. Well, when you can get a defensive lineman who can help you there, that's a big bonus in terms of the depth of position. And then obviously if you can get a big, fast one who's involved, that gives you something that's very unusual to deal with. There was a guy who had a very successful career by the name of Mark Pike, who played for Buffalo. And he was a decent reserve defensive lineman, but his greatest contribution was on special teams. And he was a very difficult guy to handle because most people are playing with linebackers, tight ends, running backs on their special teams, sometimes bigger safeties. And now you had a guy 290 pounds covering kickoffs. He was hard to hold off. It's kind of a new assignment for Nate. He's got a few of the ins and outs of how to do it, how to read the return, and which way to avoid the blocker and when to take on and when to avoid. But he does get down there pretty good, and we've noticed in practice pretty hard for anybody to stop his momentum when he gets there.